your home for New York sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Big Guy Sports Presents Wake Up with Baseball in New York on Saturday, June 27th, 2020. Here with your hosts, Jim, Matt, and Mac. Guys, how are you doing this morning?
Hello.
I'm doing. Go ahead, Matt. Let us know.
Oh, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you here for my first baseball show with you guys. Figured out joining for this 2-hour Saturday marathon. Good morning, Mac.
How you doing? I'm a little tired. I can't lie, man. As some of you know, I work at a restaurant. Other than here too, just did a 12-hour shift and a new menu, and we were busy. So, oh my God, the headaches I had. But I got up, took my shower, and I'm ready to go today. There, big guy.
You know, it's weird. I always forget that Matt is new to the baseball. Like, I mean, the baseball show on weekends. Like, I so used to having him on the air other days that, like, you just feel like at some point he had to take part in the baseball, right?
You're a wild man, Jim, throwing me on here. Now, you don't even know if I know anything about baseball.
I don't, but luckily for me, I have control of the mute button. So
you know what?
Sounds bad.
I've never watched baseball, Jim.
Well, at least you got a hat there, Matt. That's important.
Right. It looks like I know what I'm talking about.
Well, hope he knows baseball. We'll take a chance, and then we'll go from there. Speaking about baseball, this is a good week for baseball because we finally have news, which is something, you know, we're desperate for after months and months and months of back and forth bickering like a bunch of children. They're finally ready to play baseball, and we finally are getting a chance to see. And before I get into the breakdown of, you know, we're going to go through everything you need to know about the rules, everything you need to know about rosters and transactions, and we'll get into all that. But before we get into all that, I got to go around and ask you guys, I mean, it's got to be nice to finally just know that they've made a decision in the back and forth bickering is over, right? I mean, that has to mean something. It's about time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's something that I don't know. I mean, I understand you want to be coming forward with all the things that are going on, but a lot of that was just dirty laundry and just tactics and stuff like that. Really turns a lot of people off. So I'm kind of glad that we're finally going to get to see some games and have something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, you've got to feel the same way, right? I mean, it gets tiring to just constantly the same thing every day. One on Monday they send a thing through, on Tuesday they reject it, on Wednesday they send one back, on Thursday they reject it. You got to feel good about the fact that, hey, at least I don't have to hear about this anymore.
You're absolutely right, Jim. And I think the biggest part of it was that people were tired of hearing them argue about trivial and menial things. You know, like they were basically arguing about the bucket instead of drops in the bucket. Yeah. And, now that it's moving on, hopefully we can just go and proceed with the season. And I think everybody's really excited to get moving with the baseball, excuse me. You see?
Ready for tomorrow, that's for sure.
Yeah.
100% ready.
We'll start talking about the Giants any second now. Go ahead.
Tomorrow. But it is a good thing. It's great it's just great for everybody, because I know that, like, if it seemed like for the fans, everything was reaching a point where people were just getting, really, really, really upset because they were just so tired of it. You get overrun with being tired of things, and then, you want to move on. And at this point, it's just great because it's like, it's time to move on to actually play some games because, everybody's ready to go, and every other sport is coming back. So if you don't have that, then you just have a lot of people just being upset, Yep.
Everybody wants to see it.
And guys, there's going to be a lot of strategies and stuff with the new rules and stuff that the GMs and coaches are going to have to partake in. And there's going to be a lot of different strategies because, this is going to be a very quick season, and a lot of decisions are going to have to be made really quickly. And it's not the same as it was, every year where you could just take your time and bring people up. It's going to be very quick, and they got to be very decisive.
Absolutely. And we're going to break all that down. But as you said, and it's also going to be very interesting to just see how much of the season, and I'm not talking about from a playing or not playing standpoint, but how much of the season is going to be dictated based on the virus and who wins and who loses, because you just don't really know, you're in such a short window having to get things done. And what happens when, like, just throwing this out there, and of course we won't get too deep into it, but we'll just use the Yankees for example. Like, what happens if you're 2 weeks into the season and let's say Judge is playing and you have Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole, and Gleyber Torres somehow all contract the virus and have to sit for 2 weeks in a 60-game season. You can't really afford 2 weeks to just be on the injured list. You know what I'm saying, Matt?
You're right, man. And that's where it's going to come in, where it's going to be a little tricky with the numbers on the rosters, what they're allowing in the player pool and stuff like that. I feel like right now they got a pretty good layout as far as how many people they're going to allow in the facility and players on the team and how they're going to work it out. I'm just really curious to see if they can make it through in a whole season, whether the viewership is going to be enough, whether the players are going to be willing to continue to travel and do what they have to do. And, at the end of the day, though, this is a big step for everything and for everyone to really get things moving in the right direction again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be key to everything. So with that said, let's start breaking down section by section what we're looking at here. And the first thing we know, what we know for sure is that July 1st is the report date. So they're reporting on Wednesday. So just like that, they're going to be back in camp for an abbreviated camp. The regular season is anticipated to begin July 23rd, 24th. So let's start with that. That should be plenty of time, right? I mean, 3 weeks to get ready. I mean, they had 2 weeks. I find it hard to believe that these guys were just sitting home and not working out at all. So 3 weeks, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about whether they're going to play a few games. We'll get into that in a minute. But how you feel about 3 weeks and then go?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, why not? If they should have been keeping in shape all year round anyway, if they're professional baseball players, any profession, even any sport. So even when they're off this time, they should have been working out, doing their things, going down to whatever place was open for pitching or hitting and doing their drills. They should have been doing that all year. So they should be ready to go, I think.
For sure. Baseball being the most socially distant sport out of all of them, really and truly, if you think about it, that's the one sport where you don't got to be right on top of your teammate. And I think that's going to allow them to really continue to play their game the way they need to. And I'm sure to allow those guys to go to the batting cages. You're by yourself. The pitchers can get out there and throw some pitches. Some guys can hit some balls. Some guys can shag some fly balls and stuff like that. They can still do what they have to do and practice social distancing, be safe, cleanliness, things like that. It's not like football, basketball where you're rubbing bodies and you're all sweating, you're all breathing hard, you're all doing that stuff.
Even hockey, right? You're checking people.
Yeah, hockey, same way. So I think 3 weeks, I think that's good. I think those guys have probably been working. They've been in shape. You've seen the videos, the hashtag when and where. That was a big deal for a lot of the big time guys. Mike Trout, those guys, when and where. Just tell us when and where we'll be there. And so they're ready. And I'm excited to see them go. And it's going to be a sprint to the finish, and it's going to be exciting.
Exactly. That's the only thing. We have a message from Alex on Facebook mentioning the 4th of July, and that was the one thing that I was like hoping for when they were going back and forth negotiating. Is I was like, wouldn't it be great if baseball had come back on 4th of July? So it's a shame we're going to miss that, but we'll be back at least in camp. And Matt, as Matt had said, it's going to be. They are the biggest social distancing.
Yeah, I mean, next to what, tennis or something like that. I mean, where they're across the court
because you're just in your car.
Exactly, but other than that, I mean, it's not like you're boxing, like Matt was saying with football and hockey and baseball. They're all right on top of each other almost all the time. So so this should work out for baseball better than most sports.
Absolutely, I can't wait to later in the week when we get to other shows talk basketball so I can make fun of LeBron when he says, "Oh, he fouled me," and the guy says, "How'd I foul you? I'm 6 feet apart, you jerk." So I can't wait to go over that. So starting coming up right around the corner, and I'm telling you, everyone's going to get pumped up really fast. We're all going to get really pumped up when we turn on the news, when we turn on sports news Wednesday afternoon, and they're showing clips of people arriving at camp. People are going to get pumped up, baseball. So here's how the schedule is going to work. There seemed to be a ton of confusion, but we can clear that up now. So everybody's going to play 60 games. They're still going to be in their same divisions, the way it always was. when they did the 10-man setup, that was just to tell you who were the 10 teams you would only play. That's all that was. The NL East is still the NL East. The Mets and Yankees are not fighting for a division in the same division. They're just playing each other. So you have 60-game format, AL East versus NL East, AL Central versus NL Central, AL West versus NL West. You obviously get the idea. The only change that really hurt everybody is that originally when they put the 10-man divisions together just for purposes of playing each other, the Yankees and Mets had Pittsburgh in there and not the Braves, and they switched it back. So
they did them a favor.
They didn't do us a favor. We'd rather had Pittsburgh in there, but yeah, so basically 10 games against everybody in your division. So the Mets will do 10 against Philly, Miami, Washington, and Atlanta. The Yankees will do 10 against Baltimore, Toronto, Tampa, Boston. And then 3 to 4 to 6 games, depending on who it is against the other thing, which we'll get back to in a minute. So other than who you're playing, everything else is staying the same. The divisions are still the divisions. You still have one, the East, the West, Central, 3 division winners, 2 wild cards. Everything stays the same. So, but as we said before, you've got to be a little bit nervous about the 60 games because one outbreak on your team and you lose 4 or 5 key guys and they automatically have to quarantine for 2 or 3 weeks. And then though in those 2 or 3 weeks, because not every team could survive it, losing 2 or 3 stars for 2 or 3 weeks, you lose. Just want to check with you guys on this one. You lose your 2 or 3 best guys. I use the Yankees just because of how important Judge, Torres, and Cole are. You lose those 3 guys for 2 to 3 weeks, and during that period, go 5-10 over a 15-game stretch. You might not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Yankees actually might have I think the Yankees might be a bad example to using that because they have a lot of depth. The Yankees can afford to use some guys, but now let's look at some other teams. Look at a team like you mentioned, the Braves, for instance, or even the Mets for that matter. We know the Mets don't really have that kind of depth that they're looking for at certain positions. I just don't know that you're right. There's a lot of teams that can't lose their starters.
Oh yeah, I'm just using it in general.
But you lose 3-4 guys off of any team.
Season can be collapsed, right?
Absolutely. It can tank their whole 60. It's only 60 games.
Right.
So if you miss 2 weeks, if you miss 14 games, or you miss more than that, or who knows how long it takes you down, you're basically essentially what they would call done for half the season. So they have to be very careful. They have to use their rotation. They have to use the DH on the NL side. They got to do all that kind of stuff. And this is really going to put a test on the managers to see who knows their roster, who knows their depth, who knows their prospects, and what they have going on.
Oh, yep, absolutely. And Alex asks on Facebook, so they're going to do the division format with 2 New York teams together. The divisions were just set up to show you who's playing who. The Yankees are still in the AL East. The Mets are still in the NL East. It was just to show you who's playing who, and that's all. James from Facebook mentions he says the DH he thinks will help. So going down, go ahead, Mac.
Before you go on, there's one thing that we didn't talk about. Yeah, we're talking about the virus and players going down. But just think of your ace pitcher who has a nagging injury, who you don't have somebody else to replace him. That's going to really hurt a lot of teams. For instance, with Cole with the Yankees, suppose he just has a sprained ankle or something, and it throws him off just enough that he loses the game. Well, who are you going to bring up to replace a Cole? This is the kind of stuff that a lot of teams are going to face too.
Well, that's what I meant when I brought up, as Matt said, the Yankees, just speaking of the Yankees, they have good depth, but they don't have pitching. Tanaka hasn't been that great lately. Paxton's coming off an injury. You don't have Severino. You don't have Herman. Happ is, what he is. So, yeah, you couldn't afford to lose Cole, I think, for, 2 or 3 weeks. See, the thing is that it's when you get the coronavirus, it's not always, that's the thing is it's so up and down where 2 days you feel it, 2 days you don't, 2 days you feel it, 2 days you don't. It's not guaranteed just 2 weeks. It could be 3 weeks. Could be 3.5 because they're not going to let a player come back until they're guaranteed not going to infect the whole team.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
But again, even take out the coronavirus for a second. Any team that has one solid starter or maybe 2 decent starters, and I don't care what team you're on, if they have just a slight injury that affects the way they pitch and they give up 4 runs instead of 2, I mean, that's going to hurt a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Right. 45-day DL is pretty much see you next year almost.
Yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the offseason. It's a factor of again, is your medical team up to par? Your guys going to be ready to go? These guys stretched because a lot of these starters, like a Garrett Cole or a Dallas Keuchel or a DeGrom or one of these guys, they're not going to go 10 innings off the jump. They're not going to go. 9 innings off the jump. They're not going to go 8 innings off the jump. They're not even going to go 7 off the jump. You know, these guys are going to come in those first 20 games or so, and they're going to run 5 innings, 4 innings. They got to get stretched out. Those guys are not going to come in there and be tossing heaters all day long, the whole game, every inning, every frame. It's not going to happen. So I think the league and I think teams are going to do a good job of easing guys back into their roles. And come time for the sprint at the end to get to 60, because you think we've seen playoff races before, wait till you only have a few games to go. We're going to see some intense baseball, and I think the teams are going to do a good job managing their guys back in.
Never has every game counted like before. So we discussed already the postseason format, which will be the same as it is every year. Nothing changed there. 3 division winners, 2 wild cards. They decided not to add additional playoff teams. One thing that the first thing that did change for sure is that they're using DH in both leagues now, which I think, and we'll get more into it later because it's one of our topics, but that's going to help a lot of teams that, you know, especially in the National League. Like, we'll get deeper into Cespedes later because he's part of our topics for the day. But you look at teams like the Mets, you look at other teams in the National League now allowed to use those guys on their team. You know, you look at the Cardinals, for example. The Cardinals traded Jose Martinez, who's a very good hitter, to Tampa, mainly because they had a problem with what they ran into is he could hit, but he was really just a DH. And if they knew this was going to pan out the way it panned out, this is before the coronavirus, they probably would have kept him because he's a killer DH for that spot. So, you know, it's a shame that they lost him, but the DH in both leagues, does that bother you or no? Do you think that the sport should have changed? We'll start back to Matt. Do you feel that the DH is a bad thing in the National League, or are you thinking it was only a matter of time?
Well, I always thought that no matter what you do, I mean, at least have both leagues on the same page. If you want to have the DH in the American League and have the pitching hit in the National League is totally ridiculous, you know. And then you go back and forth the parks, and when you have a DH and when you don't, that's ridiculous. They should at least have one rule. I like the DH for the offense because they're naturally better hitters. So yeah, I'm for the DH in both leagues, but I'm just glad to see for once that both divisions, both conferences are on the same page.
What do you think, Matt? You okay with going full on DH even if it's permanent?
You know, I've never been the biggest fan personally of the DH, but I know that it really kind of benefits the AL more than the NL. I don't think the NL teams were built like that, you know, for that DH in most cases, but they'll work it out. They have the guys step in there and do it. Like, look at the Mets, you know, like Pete Alonso will run DH. You got Cespedes, he can run DH. He's 34 years old. He'll be useless in the field basically if he's going to be healthy. So they have options. A lot of teams have options for DH. I like the universal. If you're going to do it, make it universal. That's what that's all I'm saying. Yeah, don't do the one league, you know, the NL, the pitcher is batting, the AL, that we got the DH, and then we got to split in the World Series. It's silly. It's silly. Set your roster. You got a DH. This is your DH. This is the roster you're putting on the field. This is how you're going to pay. This is how many pitchers you can use. And let's keep it moving from there. And I think they should just leave it that way for forever. I don't think they should ever go back to not universal.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, even though I'm an NL guy, I've never liked the fact that we had the pitchers hit. Robert on Facebook mentions he hates the universal DH period, so he's not a fan. But Robert has personally already said he's till fans are in the stadium for some reason he's not going back. I don't understand that, but you know, that's a different story for a different day. Tyrone on Facebook mentions college is in bed with MLB to push the DH agenda. I've played with too many pitchers that were great hitters. Well, you know, Tyrone, you make a good point. The Mets have one of the best hitting pitching staffs in the league. DeGrom can hit, Syndergaard can hit, Matz can hit. They've all hit home runs. They're all hitters. But, you know, it just opens up playing times. And again, like I said, we'll touch base on Cespedes later. But for a team like the Mets, that's who we all know, you know, Cespedes didn't have a spot. Now he does. You know, he went from being a bench guy to probably playing every day.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, so you get used to it. As Tyrone on Facebook also mentioned, you get used to it quickly. High school, college, and minor leagues barely have fans. Bobby mentions the DH rule doesn't bother me that much. The runner on second makes me cringe. We'll get into that later, Bobby. Michael says, you talk about the DH all you want. I totally disagree. It has a place in baseball, but I think the extra innings rules. So we're going to get to the rules later in the next half hour. But yes, you were, well, not the next half hour, but one of the half hours. All right. So, or maybe soon. I'm just going down the list here. So one other thing they definitely changed is they changed where the camps will take place. If you remember when they were back negotiating like a bunch of buffoons, they were going back and forth discussing where the camps were going to be. And it was originally said all the people were going to go spring in Florida. It was always going to be. There was even talk that they were going to play the regular season games in Florida. And then Florida now has more cases currently than New York. So it just ballooned because they let everyone go to the beach, which is another story about another moron for another day. But anyway, now they're saying that all camps will take place at their ballparks in their home cities. Now, that tells me there's not going to be any spring training games, that they're just going to camp and play.
I think maybe some local teams might ride across and play together. You know what I'm saying?
Get on the bus and come over to.
Yeah, like like Baltimore can run up to New York, like close by teams. They might do something like that. But as far as anything broadcasted or anything like that, maybe I doubt it. I mean, you're playing 60 games. You guys need to get ready, get on the field, and get going. And if there's no spring training, so be it. It is what it is.
Yeah,
see spring training games or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much even for everybody. At least one decision, one way or the other, right? If you're not going to have exhibition games, any spring training games, if they're all agreement to that, then we just start and go. I can't see any specialized where one set of teams is having the spring training games and the other one isn't. As long as it's all equal and they're all ready to go when the season starts, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and Michael brings up a good point, except for Toronto, because they're in a different country. Toronto is dealing with some different issues, trying to figure out if they'll be allowed to play there. Will they be able to bring people from the U.S. over there? Because Canada, you got to remember, they've got their own set of rules for how they're dealing with the coronavirus. Totally different. There is every bit of chance Toronto will be playing somewhere in Florida spring training their whole season. There is a chance.
Yeah.
Because they have totally different rules, and they're not required to abide by the USA.
If they're going to come here and play ball, though, they're going to have to abide by the rules of the league, and the league is going to go by the rules recommended by the CDC and the government, or whatever they come up with.
Toronto, right? I mean, Matt. I mean, you probably live in Toronto or live there. And now there's a chance you're going to be displaced from your family because Toronto doesn't want you to play.
No, absolutely. And nobody's going to be able to go up there and play. They're not going to go to Toronto and play, and they're not going to be able to travel back and forth. You want these guys in the airport every couple of days flying across the border back and forth, back and forth? No, they're not going to do that. They're going to post them up down here in the States, in Florida or California or wherever it might be. And, here we have all the facilities, Disney, all that stuff like that. It's all here, all the spring training facilities.
Yeah, they're not using Disney for anything right now. I think they should bring me along for the 60-day journey. We'll call it the Big Guy Sports 60 days and 60 games in 60 days, and we'll hang out.
I'm only 30 minutes away from the Disney Gate, Jim. You can come crash out here. We can hang out by the pool, have a couple mojitos, go check out the baseball games.
Nice. See that? I'm leaving.
Wait, hang on. What was that, honey? Oh, Jim, my girl said you can't come. Sorry. Sorry.
Shut out.
Well, guys, I mean, does it really matter where they play their games as long as it's an official field, right? I mean, there's minor league games that have big fences and they're pretty much regulation major league. They're not going to have fans anyway. So we could put them basically in any good stadium, any minor league stadium to play their games here in the United States. It doesn't have to be in a certain state.
Well, you bring up, first of all, we should note that Toronto hasn't officially said no. They're talking about it. Yeah, nothing has been decided yet. Second, you bring up a good point about the fans, which is on our list, so we can get to that now. They actually have stated that the latest thing is that they're saying now possibly that it's up to each individual state whether they can have fans based on their outbreaks. because I know a couple days ago, and now they're kind of reversing on it a little bit. Texas was talking about allowing up to 5,000 fans in the stadium. So there's a chance you could see some fans. I mean, if they're going to leave it up to the state, then it's going to be state by state. I personally think it would be better if it's a league-wide thing, because I just think it causes problems. Because let's say, for example, I don't know. Let's say just Boston. Let's use Boston, for example. Let's just say Boston says, we're going to allow 5,000 fans in the seats. Every third seat, we're going to allow fans. So now Boston has a little bit of a home crowd. And 5,000 people, sound pretty loud when you're in such a quiet environment. Now you're going to have people who are, say, Yankee fans complaining, oh, but we can't. Why can't we go to the games? Why can't you, New York, let us in the stadium? They have an advantage. We don't have it. It opens a can of worms, if you ask me.
It does. No, it's definitely an advantage. If you have to go somewhere like Atlanta, they'll allow fans in their stadium. Okay, SunTrust Park is going to have 5,000 or more fans there when the Braves play. You think if the Mets have to go down there to Atlanta and play, and there's fans in Atlanta, that they're not going to have an advantage? Of course, it's going to be an advantage. It's either you're going to allow no fans, or they need to allow every facility to say, okay, every third seat, every fifth seat, based on capacity, we're going to tarp off this part of the field. Don't let anybody up on the wall by the infield or by the outfield. Tarp it off. Have them sit back, if anything, and just run it the same league-wide. You cannot have certain cities and certain teams have fans and other teams and cities can't. It just would not work. It'd be such an unfair advantage, in my opinion, Mac.
Yeah.
I don't, guys, I don't know. What does 5,000 fans actually do for an advantage? You're going to have 5,000 fans maybe booing somebody when they're used to, 50,000, 30,000 fans booing them? I mean, I really don't see the big deal there. I mean, it may sound good to say, hey, they got an unfair advantage, but really, what does 5,000 fans in Atlanta do to stop the Mets from playing a good game?
I don't know. I think it pumps up the team. Unfortunately, I'm gonna go with Matt on this one. I think the fans matter. I think every little fan. I mean, that's 5,000 fans that could tell Aaron Judge he sucks.
Yeah, and Mac.
Imagine if Mac Rom sucks, or whoever they want to yell at. That's fine.
Mac, imagine if you and I were in a boxing match, and I brought 5,000 fans with me, and you had no fans, and all 5,000 people were like, "Let's go, Matt! Let's go, Matt!" And you think that's not going to help me out? And you're there. Oh man, these guys. All these people.
I mean, I don't know. I've seen fights and I've seen games where you have 40, 50,000. I'll take the Yankee-Boston rivalry, for example. You go to Boston and we win 9 out of 11 of their games, and they have an advantage with all the fans there. And, like any boxer that goes into a ring, as you brought that up, it's good to kind of take away that home field advantage. It kind of pumps you up to be the underdog in a certain place.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean, Mac, is that it's by leaving it up to a state by state, it shouldn't be like that. MLB should say it's universal, because you're giving it doesn't matter if it's even the slightest advantage. You're giving the slightest advantage to the cities. And I could just see it opening a can of worms. I could see people in New York being upset, like, why are they going to play somewhere and there's fans and we're not allowed in?
Mm-hmm. Well, in that case, they should kick Tampa out of the whole league, because they have, 5,000 fans when they hold 50,000.
If they're lucky.
It's going to be a sellout when they play.
But
Matt answered, Michael, your question for you. You said, let's get real. Police can't monitor the beaches. How are they going to keep people in the stands? They wouldn't give them the opportunity not to. They would corner off areas. They would corner off seats. If you've looked at, as movie theaters are getting ready to open with social distances, instead of them just hoping that people will go in the theater and sit every 3 seats apart, they're actually taking seats out, or they're covering up devices to where there's no seat to sit in. So that's what they'll do. They have enough money to go and cover seats and make it where you can't sit in it. So, and Robert from Facebook says 5,000 fans is better than nothing. I agree with you.
Put 5,000 in there and pump some noise into that guy.
So we're about to push up against the 30 and 30 Sports Flash. When we get back, we're going to talk about the confusing way they're doing the rosters, some of the in-game rules we're going to talk about, and then we're going to do a complete roster and transaction rule breakdown, because this is pretty interesting stuff. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff for baseball fans to really pay attention to this year that they're not used to having to pay attention to, because every roster move matters. So, but we'll be back in about 45 seconds. We have our Sports Flash.
The Big Guy Sports 30 and 30 Sports Flash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your 30 and 30 Sports Flash. In baseball news, Tampa Bay has announced that top baseball prospect Wander Franco will be included in their player pool and eligible for the regular season. The Mets have announced that Yoenis Cespedes will be cleared to play and ready for opening day and could start at DH. And the Yankees' Aaron Judge has begun to hit off a tee and might be ready for opening day, although no official word yet. That's your Big Guy Sports 30 and 30 Sports Flash.
All right, so there's your Big Guy Sports 30 and 30 Sports Flash. One of the things I want to bring up, this confuses me, so hopefully it won't confuse everybody else. The rosters. Everybody knows the team's going to get to submit 60 player rosters, which I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe the deadline for that is Sunday.
Yes.
Tomorrow. So you're going to do 40-man roster plus a taxi squad of 20. But here's where you get into confusing. Okay, so each man has a 30-man roster for the first 2 weeks, then 28 for the next two, then 26 for the remainder of the season. Okay, so if you have 26 guys on the regular season roster, 20 people on the taxi squad, that's 46. Where are the other 14 guys?
That's a good question. I mean,
because they say it's 40-man rosters, but with a taxi squad and a taxi squad of 20, where are the other 14 guys? Like, are they hanging out at my house? Where are the other? Because
it's 60 guys, right? It's 60 guys on the player pool,
but only
26
active after 3 weeks.
I'm not really sure how they're going to do that. If it's going to have to be a submission for who's going to be playing, or is it going to be a move up a prospect, somebody going down?
We're going to cover all that in the rosters and transactions. But one thing we're not going to cover is it doesn't tell you. It tells you you're going to have 2 weeks. You have 30 guys. Then 2 weeks you have to cut down to 28. Then 2 weeks you got to cut down to 26. And it tells you have 26. And it tells you have a 20-man taxi squad. But it doesn't tell you where the other 14 guys went.
Well, it also says that you can carry another guy when you're to one more
doubleheader.
Doubleheader when you're traveling away, and there's also where I was reading when there's 3 players that you can bring with you eventually, just a catcher and 2 other players that you can bring with you too for anything for COVID and stuff like this. And I was also reading where there's mention where they're going to have certain players down in Nashville. This hasn't been approved.
Yeah.
Right. So these players are going to go down there from all the teams, and Nashville hasn't said yes or no to this, but they're going to pick a site where these guys can go and maybe play each other, form 2 teams, and be ready to come up when you need to. So they're going to be putting them somewhere. They're going to pay them, not the major league total, what a contract is, but they're going to give them, I think it's like $100 day DM was what I was
108.
reading. Right. Yeah. So that's where the extra player is going to be. They're going to be down at some affiliated place, some minor league park, where they're all going to gather there from what I was understanding, and they'll all be playing baseball down there. So it's going to not just be 26, Jim. It's going to move up to 27 when they start moving in for doubleheaders. And then they're going to have a spot where they're going to have actually 3 extra players for the COVID. One has to be
don't give away my rosters and transactions.
Okay.
That doesn't answer my question about where the missing 14 people are. And
they're just inactive. They're going to be inactive.
What a splendid idea by baseball in this Nashville thing. I could see it now. Mid-September. Oh, no more taxi squads. All of Nashville got infected, and we put them all together. Splendid idea. Why don't we just put them all in like the Metrodome or wherever stadium somewhere and just let them all keep it together?
Is the Metrodome still around, Jim? Or did they tear that thing down?
I forgot what they call the same place now. What do they call that thing now?
Wasn't that like that rollerball movie was held there where that was a crazy sport? I think that's where it went to.
I think the concept behind the roster trimming, really, if I really was to sit and think about it, the concept would be, okay, we're going to start you off with a high number of guys, 30-something guys. That way everybody can rotate, guys can get loose, guys can tighten up, all that stuff like that. And then we're going to trim you down because now you know who your starters are. You know who your full-time guys are. You know who your starting pitching rotation is. You know who your DH is. And you don't need to have that flexibility on your everyday roster. So, boom, they trim you down. Now You've got your player pool, your taxi, your 3 guys that are come as reserves just in case. Then you've got your bunch of Nashville emergency call-ups that all of the NFL. Why do I keep doing this? All of the MLB teams can access. Okay, so if you look at the concept of what they're trying to do, I think it's a novel and good idea. But I'm just really curious. They're going to pay $108.50 a day to be in Nashville on a per diem. That's literally next to nothing. And
It's Applebee's money.
yeah, I guess so. You can go get a couple
That's about all you
buy
can
two
do.
get ones or something.
But I do understand, Jim, your point about them having it all together in one spot. But isn't that what the NBA is doing down in Disney when they go?
No, they're not actually. Now they're talking about possibly being somewhere else. They don't know yet because they're, Florida. But that gets me to I want to talk about, this is probably the most controversial thing of everything, is this one rule change that nobody likes. So one of the things that Major League Baseball wants to do is, because of the fact that you're playing 60 games in under 70 days, there's not going to be a lot of days off. They want to make it, they don't want to have 15 inning games. They don't want to have 18 inning games. They don't, they want to get everything going, keep it tight. So one of the things, and I should make a note, this is only in effect for the regular season this year. It's not in effect for the postseason, and it has not been in effect for next year. It's just because it's a shortened season. When you get to the night, after you get to extra innings, every half inning that starts, the team will start automatically with a runner on second base. This is for nothing other than to save time. I know a lot of people don't like it, but you don't want to have 20-inning games when you have very little time off. What do you guys think about that, starting at second base?
Mac, take that.
Please. There's a lot of rule things that happen in sports to try to either speed up the game or to change it so that there ain't as many ties and there ain't as many extra innings, and they're always coming up with these crazy ideas. I don't know. It's kind of funny to me, but I understand.
I likes this rule, just so you know.
No.
I understand what they're trying to do, but is this the right thing to do? I don't know. I really don't know.
It's very interesting.
I'm very confused about it. I haven't done too much research into it, but first of all, is it a pinch runner? Like, is it one of your starters?
You won't be confused after the show, trust me, because
we're gonna cover.
I'm going to tell you, all I know is that the person who made, this is what it is. Whoever made the last out for you in the last innings, let's say top of the 10th, Aaron Judge made the third out for the Yankees. In the top of the 11th, he has to go to second base to run. If you pinch run for him, he comes out of the game. It's like making a change.
What I don't understand is that they'll do some silly stuff like this, but they won't give us a pitch clock. You want to save time? Put a pitch clock up. That's what you do if you want to save time. You don't stick a guy on second base. What if Bartolo Colon gets the last out of the last inning? Is he going to go to second and run, and then you got to pinch for him?
Take him out. Yeah, well, Bartolo Colon should never hit, hopefully.
But he can, and he does. The fact of the matter is, it's a joke. Like Vania said, it's a joke. That is you're basically giving away runs, is what you're doing. You're giving a handicap.
That's how they end the game fast.
You're giving a handicap,
Every league has tried to do something like this. The NFL with their overtime rules. I'm not sure if hockey has. They have their shoot-offs, right, where they're not actually playing the game, so they get free shots.
Yeah.
So everybody tries to shorten the games a little bit. This, it's kind of weird to me, but I understand the thought process.
Well, actually, just so we have it on the record, so baseball fans do not go out there and start losing their shit. This is only for this year. And it's only for the regular season. This is not like the DH thing, which might change permanently. This is just a 60-day games and 65-day rule. But let me read some other things to you so that you might find interesting. One other thing they're doing, which I actually do like this, is normally in baseball, if there's a rain out, if you didn't get through 5 innings, the game starts over. And now they're doing it to where any stoppage of any game, the game gets suspended and continued. So if the Yankees or Mets are up 6-0 on somebody in the third inning and it's pouring rain, they don't have to wait 3 hours. They could say, okay, we're going to call it so we don't run these players down. And on the next time these guys are off, they're going to pick it up right where it was at, right in the third inning, which I like because when I watch baseball and it's raining out and I'm happy they're trying to play, and then my team gets up 4 or 5 runs, I'm sitting there stressed the whole time like, we got to get through 5. We got to get through 5. Now I don't have to do that anymore. Now I know that, hey, we're going to continue this no matter what. That's a good thing.
If they want to do that, they need to stay out of Florida because it's hurricane season until October. And it's going to rain every single day down here. So they're going to come down here.
Teams play in a dome?
Miami
and Tampa are in a dome, aren't they?
Well, if they're going to be – well, yes, they're domed. But, I mean, if they're going to be here, if they're going to be playing in the minor league facilities and stuff
They're
that.
They're not doing minor league. They're playing – the Miami and Tampa are going to play in their minor leagues will be at their stadium.
Nobody's going out there anyway. If you've ever been out to Tampa, they got the quote unquote, the Fenway of the South over there outside of Dade City. It's insane. I don't even know. It looks just like Fenway Park, except it's small. It's pretty neat. They can go over there and play, but nobody drives out to St. Pete to go see Tampa Bay. They don't want to go.
They want to move them to move them across the bridge. They said,
yeah, they need to.
But Matt brings up a good point. Okay, suppose you get rained out, say 5 games, and then on top of that, normally the games that you waited and you played at that were delayed by rain, suppose that's another 4 or 5. Now you're going to have to do double headers. Now you're going to have to play more games on one day. So there is a point Matt's bringing up that's very interesting, because if you get 3 suspended games and on top of other severely rained out games or whatever postpones these games, you only got 10 days to deal with. So that is an interesting thing.
Well, I agree with both of you, but at the same time, you got to look at it as you want to play or you not want to play. You want to play baseball, you want to play. You want to play baseball, you got to make some concessions because you got to get the season done before November. So, and the only way to do that is to make sure that, you're playing 60 games in 70 days. There's only way to do it. So, a couple side notes here to gameplay. Position players pitching. There's a new restriction that said position players can only pitch in a game that was an extra innings or trailing by more than 6 runs. That was going to be the new rule. They scrapped that. So, if you want, if Gleyber Torres wants to pitch in the 5th inning, he can. They're keeping the 3 batter minimum rule. When a relief pitcher comes in, he either has to face 3 batters or finish the inning. So
that should always be the rule.
Yeah. So that's the new rule. I already mentioned if a suspended game gets cut short, less than 5 innings, it's continued at a later date. Don't misunderstand. If they're in the 6th inning and it gets rained out, whoever's winning won. It's only for games below 5, which is better than restarting them. So it still take less time. Protocols in place for the spread of COVID-19. Players, coaches, and support staff will be tested every other day during spring training, the regular season, and postseason. Players will receive temperature checks twice per day. Antibody testing will be conducted once a month. Social distancing will be encouraged on both off the field and on the field. Players and other teams personnel not participating in the game will have to sit in the stands at least 6 feet apart. So if you're part of the team personnel who doesn't go on the field, you'll be in the stands, not in the dugout. Non-playing personnel must wear masks in the dugout and bullpen at all times. No pregame exchange of lineup cards. No high fives, fist pumps, or hugs. So there's going to be a lot of, Matt would just do it back.
Elbow bumps.
Matt will do it back and we'll be there. No spitting or chewing of tobacco or sunflower seeds. I can't wait to see how they stop people from doing a natural thing like spitting. Like, it's like telling someone you can't go.
Spitting is a bad habit, Jim. You shouldn't spit anyway.
So natural. How do you remember to even think? Don't spit. I can't wait to see that. A ball will be thrown out once it's been touched by multiple players. So every time there's a ball put in play, we're going to throw it out. Fights are strictly prohibited or they'll be suspended. So maybe they should keep Puig out of the league this year because he likes to fight.
He lost his mind, didn't he?
No,
listen,
go ahead.
These kind of things annoy me because it speaks to a bigger issue of like, okay, there's people out here that can't get antibody testing and can't get tested out here. And we're going to do this every month. And people are going to be upset about this, that these people are getting what some would call preferential treatment, the players and people participating. But if you guys want sports, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have to let them test every other day and every 2 days. And you're not going to get your tests if you need it necessarily all the time because you guys want sports. You're going to have to give something up.
Well, not to mention the fact that even if you get tested,
it doesn't matter.
If I go right now and I get tested and they tell me that I have it, the only way I'm surviving it is if my body can fight it. They have no cure for you. They're not going to give you like, here's 2 Tylenol, congratulations. You know,
so I mean, it's necessary, and it's gonna do. Actually, I'm kind of thankful for it because it's gonna lay a groundwork for the other leagues as to okay, baseball did it this way and it worked. They managed to trace and control and quarantine and provide protection for their players and staff, and so other leagues can look at it and say, okay, we can proceed under this protocol.
Well, it brings an interesting point. They mentioned in there, I said the antibody testing. When a player does test positive, we've been using Garrett Cole all day, so we'll use him. Because I know how much the Yankees love their $36 million man. So if he tests positive for coronavirus, not only does he have to beat the coronavirus, he'll have to actually pass an antibody test to come back. And just to give everybody an idea of how much one of these things can actually really wreck someone's season, there have been people out there who, if you read the stories, who have contracted this virus. And even though they didn't die from it and they didn't need to go to ICU, nothing like that, they still have symptoms on and off 100 days later.
Yep.
There's no guarantee that when you get this 2 weeks later, you're clear.
Right. It can linger. It can linger, and your antibody test will come back as if you don't have it, as if you just have the virus still. But the fact of the matter is, those guys, your health is important. They take good care of themselves. They have the right facilities. They have access to things and treatments we don't have access to as average guys out here, as average citizens. And I think they're going to be okay. They're going to be well taken care of.
Let me tell you what happens if a player tests positive. This is their rule. If a player tests positive, there's no minimum or maximum length of placement. A player must be placed on a list. It's a separate injury list that's just for COVID-19. And they have to be self-isolated for further assessment. Any player who tests positive will not be allowed to return until he tests negative twice.
Wow.
So just so you know, it's a separate DH list, not the same DH list. But speaking of the DH list, they've changed it a little bit. So what they're going to do is that, because it's a shorter season, rather than have a 10-day injured list for position players and a 15-day injured list for pitchers, there's going to be a 10-day injured list for all players. And instead of the 60-day list, because it used to be, 10, 15, 60, it's going to be 10 and 45. And one other note, before we move to rosters and transaction rules, is the MLB has the right during the regular season and the postseason, if they feel that a certain city has become overrun with COVID-19 cases, to move a team to any neutral site they like for health reasons. So you could start the season in Queens in the Bronx and end the season in Alaska. They can do whatever they want as long as the stadium meets the specs of a Major League Baseball stadium.
You'll be seeing, you'll see Champions Field at Disney here. You'll see it used. It's a Major League size stadium. They will be here. They will play here. I guarantee it. They have the facilities and they have the capabilities, and they're out there sanitizing that baby right now. So I know they got something planned.
We got a stadium over here, minor league. I got a minor league team plays 10 minutes from me, the Lakewood Blue Claws. They can come over here and play in Lakewood. It's a nice
for sure. They can sell tickets for $7 a pop, sell us beers for $3 a pop. Fill up what they're allowed to fill up, and let us enjoy some baseball.
Lakewood holds like 2,000, so if you got to do like 10%, it'd be like 3 fans. The 3 of us go with press passes.
They can let us call the game too.
Why not? I mean, we could definitely do it. We could do it.
Definitely, for sure.
I mean, I would be the best. I would be great at it because I would just be like, oh, here comes, Javier Rojas. Oh, he sucks. He's hitting 142. I would just be like, he's terrible. He can't do it. So how does this guy get on the team? So now we're going to move on to, now that we've covered all you need to know about the rules and the basics, which, I don't think you can't break it down any better than that. We just gave you 45 minutes of details on exactly what's going on. Now we're going to get to the fun part. especially for anyone who's like me, who like has a GM mind. Like I play a lot of fantasy baseball games, so I'm all about the GM aspect. So if you're a GM guy, this is your segment. So we're going to talk about player pools and how it all works, rosters and transactions. What does player pool mean, and what does an alternate site mean? So here's what it is. Sunday at 4:00 marks the first major roster deadline for all 30 teams. They must submit their 60-man player pool. That's it. So by Sunday at 4:00, you will know who's playing baseball this year and who's not. Because if you're not on that 60-man, and most teams have a couple hundred players if you count all their minor leagues. If you're not on that 60-man, if you're one of those other 140 guys, you're not playing baseball in America this year because there's no minor league playing this year. Okay. So they have to announce their player pool by Sunday at 4. That group of players will be eligible to play this season. According to the league's operating manual, all players on the 40-man roster that the club anticipates participating during the season will be part of the playing pool, while the rest will be made up of non-40-man roster players under contract. Any 40-man roster players who are not included in the player pool, for example, maybe a prospect who isn't deemed ready, will still be paid during the season. So it's very important for people, especially like myself, who love to follow the minor leagues because of the fantasy leagues I'm in that involve minor league players, to understand what part of the roster is that guy on. Is he on the 40-man or is he on the 20-man? Now, if he's on the 20-man, he could still come up, and I'll get to that more in a minute, but let me just read this one section because it's all totally about the player pool, and you guys comment. No team will be allowed to exceed the limit of 60 players at any time during spring training or the regular season. While 30 players will make up the initial opening day roster for each team, the other 30 will remain at an alternate training site, which is likely to be a ballpark of one of the club's nearby minor league facilities. So they're not doing the Nashville thing, it looks like right now. It looks like they're going to be at a minor league. So, example, the Mets might put their guys in Staten Island or Brooklyn. They still have Brooklyn too? Brooklyn Cyclones? Yeah. They put them at one of those close place. So it says, for instance, the Pirates announced that the alternate site will be at their AA affiliate in Altoona, Pennsylvania, which makes perfect sense because it's close to where they are. Teams must also provide a list of which of those 60 players will be invited to Major League training camp, while the others head to the alternate training site for their workout. You might think that all the 60 guys will go to Major League camp, but remember that teams are training at their Major League parks where there's not as much room as there is at spring training facilities, so you might not see all 60 at camp. And that makes sense. I've spent many times in Florida at minor league baseball camps. If you've ever been to Florida, like, for example, Port St. Lucie with the Mets, they have their stadium, and then they have 2 workout fields behind it. You don't have that in Queens.
Yeah, giant facilities.
Yeah, unless they're going to go throw the ball around the parking lot. I mean, there's not, So far, let's just really quick touch base on that. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, right? 60 players, 40, 20 go somewhere else. The rest join them, pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary. They got to it's a novel idea, like I said before, and I think it's going to be okay. I mean, the rotation, the guys will be easy to access. You need relief, things like that, if they're close by. My curiosity is, does every major league team have a facility in proximity? Is there somewhere nearby to every major league baseball stadium where they can facilitate this sort of activity? Would be my question. I'm really not sure
have
on that.
One within a few hours. I'm not sure where the nearest Yankee one is, but I know that Yankees have Trenton. The Yankees have Trenton Thunder. That's a Yankees one. And the Mets have Brooklyn and Staten Island.
Right.
In Buffalo, unless they got rid of Buffalo. But the Mets usually have a lot that are close. Mac, let me read this one to you, and you can comment on this. So it says, won't teams have non-roster invitees in camps, and how can they put them in the player pool? Teams around the league have multiple non-roster players in camp, many of whom can opt out clauses in their contracts. Teams may put players on their 60-man pool, though what happens if they opt out before the end of camp has not been decided yet. In most cases, players with opt-out clause can request to be released, but any player who's been removed from a team's player pool by the way of release or waiver assignment may not be added back to the player pool for the remainder of the season. This is a key to remember here. I'll use a good person on the Mets who's a good example, Matt Adams, who probably wasn't going to make the team and now will. If, unlike usually in baseball, you can release a player. Let's say he's not going to make your minor league roster. You can release him. He can go out and see if he could find – he's not going to make your major league roster. You can release him. He can go see if another team will put him on their 26. And then if they don't and he decides, okay, now I want to come back and be part of your minor league system, he can. Not this year.
Yeah.
If he requests his release, he can't come back.
Well, he can't come back to that team, right?
Right.
I mean,
what I mean,
right.
in the past, you could.
Right.
You could leave, shop your services, find out, oh, no team wants me on their major league roster. Maybe I will take that assignment with the Mets to go to AAA.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean, this is one of the most interesting part and overall in this picture, because we don't have the minor leagues player, and you can't take your time and have a player grow, say 3 or 4 months, and then bring them up. You can't do that this year. So it's that 60 man for each team. You got your extra 20 down there. Like for instance, Tim Tebow. The Mets are going to bring him up to the taxi squad, and I mean, he can't sit down there. Players can't develop like they did in the past. Some players really develop fast and they're really good, and you can bring them up during the year and then send them back down. It's a totally different system this year, which is really interesting to me, where the managers, the GMs have got to be working in unison to say, hey, listen, this is how many pitchers we want, this is how many relievers we want, this is how many position players we want, and we can't wait for somebody to develop over a few months anymore. You're right there. And other teams, too, their strategy is, hey, that was part of this guy's 60-man roster. He left. Now we got to get rid of one of our players. If we want him to come over to see us and get on our 60-man pool there, then I mean, it's going to be really crazy, and they're really going to have to be on point when the season starts like this.
I liked you until you said Tim Tebow. If anybody out there is looking for a hosting job, we have.
Hey, Tebow's going on that 60-man roster, Jim.
No
I don't
way.
care what you say.
No,
He's going on that 60.
He better not be on that. I think Tim Tebow, though, just signed to do something else with a network, so I don't know if he even can. He might be giving up baseball.
Yo.
So let me read this to Matt. Our question, are teams locked into those 60 players all season? No. Teams will be able to make all the standard transactions. So in order to add someone to the player pool, another player must be removed. Players on the 40-man roster can be removed via trade, waiver, return of the Rule 5 draft selection, release, designation for assignment, or placed on the 45-day injured list, placed on the COVID-19 injured list, or placement on the suspended list, or retire. Non-40-man roster players may be removed by trade, release, COVID-19 related, or placement on the suspended list, restricted, disqualified, or ineligible list. Any injured non-40-man roster player will count against the team's player pool. So this is where I'm still not fully understanding what they're trying to do here. So they have 60-man rosters, 20 years taxi rosters. Then there's a 40-man roster, but only 26 players after time will eventually be up. So then you have another 14 players who are part of your 40-man roster, and then you have 20 people on your taxi squad, but they don't go into detail to explain, can you just constantly bring back and forth the taxi squad? They don't explain this. Or you really have to go from that 14-man pool, and the 20-man taxi squad is just to protect your minor league stars. I mean, you know what I mean? And I want to bring this. Let me read this to you so you can make sense of this for me, Matt, or try and make sense for me. So it says, how many players will be eligible to play each day? When the season opens, teams will submit rosters of 30 players with a minimum of 25. 2 weeks later, they have to let 2 go. Then 2 weeks after that, not go, but down. 2 weeks later, they got to let another 2 go. So eventually they get down. So after 30 days, they're down to 26-man rosters for the next 30 days. They'll be permitted to add a 27th player, as Mac had mentioned a lot earlier on double headers. There will be no limitation on numbers of pitchers allowed on a roster. I mean, so I'm still trying to understand. So if what's the point of the 20-man taxi squad if it's really all about your 40-man?
Because your taxi squad, they're going to have certain guys. You know, you're taking 3 guys from your taxi squad. You're not taking your whole 20. Okay, so your taxi squad 1 week, you know, you might have a guy that you don't need to use it. He doesn't hit good against team A or team B, or you might need a lefty instead of a righty or whatever it might be, and they're going to use that to just pick and pluck. Basically, all right, we're going to take these 3 this week because he hits well against this pitcher and that pitcher that they have, or you know, they look at all the analytics are going to come into play here. This season, these 60 games are going to show you what analytics are really all about because they're going to have to use it to the fullest. Okay, they're going to have to know this guy can hit here. He doesn't hit well in this stadium. This guy hits well in this stadium. So they're going to use that player pool. They're just going to rotate guys in and out. As needed.
Confusion comes for me, Matt, though. This is really confusing. They have no rule on how the taxi squad. They keep talking about the 40-man. Which is the other part of the roster. They have no explanation of how if you can even use the taxi squad players during the season and how often you can bring them up. Because anybody who knows the ins and outs of baseball knows that in a normal season, a minor league player, like take, for example, that Yankee guy we always bring up, Jason Dominguez, right? You can only call him up and send him down in his career a total of 3 times before you have to either keep him up or you lose him.
But I don't think it's a call-up. I don't think they're considered minor leaguers if they're just in the pool. You know what I'm saying? Those are roster guys they're on the roster. They're not necessarily call-up, call-downs. They're not being relegated or put on assignment. You see? They're just on the roster. You're just not going to be at the stadium with us today. It's kind of like not dressing for a college football game, basically. You can hang out. You're just not going to play.
Well, it's interesting because I have the taxi squad thing coming up, which is going to hopefully answer my question. But let me read a little bit more of this for you guys. Will most teams include their top prospects in a player pool? One executive argued that including your top prospects among your 60-man pool will give those youngsters a chance to develop this season because the other ones are obviously not going to be working out anywhere. While another one says, if you truly think your prospect will not be up this year, you won't use him this year. Like maybe like the Jason Dominguez, the Yankees will probably never call up this year. No. Do you leave him off because if you put him on there, you're wasting a roster spot? You know, if you're not going to use the guy, what's the point of having him on the 60-man? Can you make trades? Yes, you could still make trades up till August 31st. Here's the deal with the taxi squad. Okay. Each team will be permitted a 3-player taxi squad for every road trip, giving them immediate options to replace an injured or COVID-19 infected player. Okay, so right off the bat, they're telling you you're taking your 26 once it's down to 26, plus an extra 3. The players will come from the 60-man player pool, but the goal of bringing them on the trip is to avoid putting a player on a commercial flight if an injury occurs. A 3-player taxi squad, everybody has to carry on road trips, must feature at least 1 catcher, while the other 2 players can be pitchers or position players. It doesn't matter. So it's got to be 1 catcher. One executive, he said he expects most teams to carry a pitcher, a utility player, and a catcher, although some could opt for 2. These 3 players will be permitted to work out with the team on the road, while the catcher will also be allowed to serve as the bullpen catcher. At the end of the road trip, taxi squad players will return to the team's alternate training site, though the catcher will be allowed to stay with the team as the bullpen catcher for home games. Taxi squad players will not be paid MLB salary or accrue service time. That's important, service time. But they will receive major league allowance of $108, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, and 50 cents per day, along with their minor league salary. So the $108 is for food. It's not their salary. They still get their salary. The key thing they said in there was service time. Now, if I'm a minor league player who's got a lot of talent, that pisses me off. Because if you're not accruing a year of service time, then that means that this whole year for you was a waste. A great minor league talent, major league teams, 95% of the time will not bring up their minor league talent until they're forced to. They always, I know you get the exceptions of Bryce Harper and crew, but that's rare, very rare. Teams don't usually do that because they want to get the most years out of them before they need to pay them. And for a player, every year that goes by, that's a year of service time. So it's like, okay, well, wait a second. I only have now 2 years left before they have to bring me up or I get to go somewhere else.
Yep.
now they're not getting that service time for minor league guys. Even if they're on the taxi squad, they're now, if a team wants to, it's like the year is just lost for them. If for them, it's like you didn't play at all, Mac.
Hey, listen, it is what it is for this year. I mean, either play or don't play. I mean, that would be up to them, I guess, right? So if you don't want to play and you're mad about the service time, then you don't have to be on the roster. So I mean, that's just going to be a personal choice for everybody. I would rather be playing baseball than not playing baseball at all and making some kind of money. So it would be an easy decision for me.
I believe. What's gonna happen? I think we're gonna see some guys we don't expect to see, because I truly believe we're going to see some curveballs. I think we're going to see some stars sit out this year. I think we're going to have some guys that come back and say, I don't think I'm going to play this year. And it's going to surprise some people. You're going to see sooner or later, you're going to see that headline roll across of some big name from some team, whether it be Colorado or Anaheim or wherever it might be. And they're going to say, oh, wow, they're losing him. He's not going to play these 60 games. He said he's going to sit out these 60 games. He's not going to put himself in that situation. And you're going to end up seeing some guys get called up that weren't necessarily ready, and it's going to affect some people. We're going to see a lot of different things unfold in the coming days and weeks leading up to this that are going to surprise a lot of people, I believe.
Well, and you hit it on the head. You might even see them play, and then you might see, like, I'll just use a name, like say Mike Trout comes and he plays, and he gets hit with the coronavirus and has to sit out 2 or 3 weeks, and I believe he's a new father. And, you might see him say something after those 2 or 3 weeks, like, listen, I don't want to risk my family, so I'm going to just sit out the rest of the season.
Right.
You might see that. I mean, it's all about health and safety first. I mean, we've already seen, I won't get deep into it, but we've already seen 3 or 4 basketball players say they're not going to play this year because it'll either be a risk to their family or their child. And I don't think you can get on a player for that. They're putting their family first. I understand you want to watch sports. We all want to watch sports. I get it, but not at the cost of seeing their kids or their wife die because they contracted a virus to play baseball.
Stay away. Stay with the team. Stay in your alternate training. That's what I wanted to ask you, too. Are they basically quarantining these players in this alternate training site? Are they going to have to stay there, or are they going to be coming and going as they please? Are they still going to be able to go out and do things? Are they going home? Or are they staying at the training facilities?
That's
like they would do for spring training.
Players are always going to have to go home because even with the big league players, I mean, the Yankees and the Mets, the Yankees and the Mets play, they don't have hotels in the park. I mean, they're going to have to. The only place I know that has a hotel in the park is Toronto.
Yeah. But I mean, if these guys are going to have to go to, say, Trenton or Staten Island or whatever it might be, that they don't necessarily go home every day in that situation, would they? They would stay at the facility, or like say down here in Florida, where are they going to go home? Are they going to drive from Orlando to Tampa every day, 2.5 hours? Are they going to, because a lot of those guys live in Orlando in the middle of the state, and I'm just curious as to if they're using that as a quarantine location or what. I don't know.
Well, I think I misspoke before, and I could be wrong. I have to look this up. I think Staten Island is the Yankees minor league home, so they would go to Trenton, and the Mets is Brooklyn. I might have confused that for a minute, but it's very interesting, and that's pretty much a breakdown of how the roster and the rules transactions are going to work out. I kind of skipped the 30 and 30 flash because we were on a roll, but we'll get it at 10 o'clock. The next thing I want to bring up, there's a little bit of an unfair advantage if you're a Met and a Yankee fan to this schedule, because the Mets and the Yankees are both teams, and we'll get to this in a minute, that are predicted to, well, actually, I'll bring this up now before we get into it. Mets and Yankees are both predicted to make the playoffs. Las Vegas just released their win total predictions. The Dodgers are predicted to win the most games. And I'll be honest with you, I was doing roster breakdowns, and I know you want to be a Yank fan, give a face. Dodgers are the best team in baseball. If you look at their roster, I mean, my Lord. They have an all-star outfielder who can't even start. He's the number 4. AJ Pollock is the number
crazy.
4. They are, if you look at their roster, they arguably, because I know the Yankees like to get this title, arguably have the best bullpen in baseball. They have a really good starting staff, and they definitely have the best lineup in baseball. I mean, my Lord.
Listen, they have one of the best closers in baseball with Kenley Jensen.
Got everything.
Like they have it all.
Yeah, it's very good. So the Dodgers, I want to bring this point up before I get into why I think the Mets and Yankees are at a disadvantage. Mets and Yankees are both, according to Vegas, predicted to make the playoffs. They have the Dodgers predicted with the most wins at 37, the Yankees at 36.5, the Mets at 32. But if you look down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the Mets are the 9th team. 10 teams go to the playoffs. So they have the Mets going. They have them both. Here's where there's a little disadvantage. So, and I don't know what baseball's thinking here, okay? Simple schedule formula would have been you play the teams that were in your division. For example, the AL East, you play all 4 of those teams 10 times, which they're doing. That's 40 games. And then you play the 5 teams in the other division 4 times each, and that's 20 games. 40 and 20 is 60. You play everybody the same amount of time. Perfect. It's easy. Never been so easier. You think baseball does things easy? Of course not. Of course not. Maybe the Wilpons own baseball, and I don't know. So anyway, they decided that there's going to be some teams in your out of division that you're only going to play 3 times instead of 4, and then you're going to play your rivals 6 times. So the reason, yes, and the Dodgers, and Robert also says, we're still talking about system. Dodgers also have the number 1 minor league system in baseball also, which is actually true. Number 1 ranked minor league system. So anyway, listen to this. So because the Yankees and the Mets, 2 playoff contending teams, are rivals, instead of them playing only 4 times, they're playing 6 times, which means that maybe, like, for example, I'll give you an example. I'll use the Yankees. If you're playing everyone 4 times, that's equal. Now you're playing the Mets 6 times, and instead of playing the Marlins 4 times, who are not good, you might only play them twice because it's still got to even out to 20. So some team in the division, and I'm looking right here, are only going to play like Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a contender for the division. They're really good. Tampa Bay gets to play the Marlins 6 times while you play the Mets. That's a disadvantage. Why is it not 4, 4, 4, and 4? Why did they make that last minute switch to one team is 6 and the rest are 3 and 4? That's dumb. Totally dumb. You don't.
I guess that has to do with probably ratings for TV. I would imagine, right? I mean, who wants to see the Yankees and the Marlins play?
Dude, the ratings are going to be through the roof because people are dying for sports. I mean,
but you still got matchups that are going to draw bigger audiences. You know that, Jim.
So what you're saying is, if the Yankees missed the playoffs because you had to play the Mets 6 times, you don't you're good with because the ratings were good on Yes Now.
Well, I'm talking about not me. I'm talking about
I want to know how you feel about that. Do you not feel that's unfair?
If we can't beat the Mets the majority of the times, then maybe we don't belong in the playoffs. I mean,
the Mets is just an example of the conference. You think it's fair that they could have made the schedule and they originally were going to, where you just played everyone the same amount of times and then they make that switch?
I think there's a lot of things in baseball that aren't fair. But you know something? I mean, we could go in hours about what's wrong with baseball and what's unfair in baseball. Listen. Best thing they could come up with. Major League Baseball is not going to make any money off the fans. They're looking for big matchups. It makes sense that they would do that. How I feel, if we can't beat the Mets and we can't win our games, then we don't deserve to go to the playoffs. I don't care who we play.
Good. Well, enjoy being home because you ain't beating us. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, normally, if you look at it, rivals are local issue. Like it's they're within proximity of each other. And I think doing that kind of limits travel for a lot of these teams. You know what I'm saying? So that's a couple less games. They got to travel to Florida, travel to Boston or wherever it might be, you know. So I understand it from that perspective. And I understand what you're saying, Jim, about the advantage and stuff like that. About, okay, yeah, this one team might be playing a bad team 4 extra times than you are and this and that. But all this really does is just supplement us our little 2-week period of interleague play before the All-Star break we would normally get. Or after, you know, this is just them giving us our interleague play. That's all it is.
You do realize that teams have been like saying they're kind of tired of the interleague. Even the fans. Last year they didn't even do the 2-week and 2-week interleague anymore. Last year the whole season had interleague. You had playing an interleague series on opening day.
I like that, actually. I liked it all the way across. I love interleague personally, and I would love it even more if they would have a universal DH. If they had a universal DH, I guarantee you that people wouldn't mind the interleague as much because it's irritating when you're playing a 3 game or something like that to watch it. back and forth. And Jim, I understand your disposition of having to play us extra times. I wouldn't want to play us extra times either. You being a Mets fan,
I'm not
I get
worried.
it.
I am
I
not
get
worried.
it. I get it. I get
I'm
it. It's
worried
okay,
about
Jim.
I'm worried about fairness to the league. We're not the only ones in this predicament. If you look at some of the other matchups from teams in other divisions, some teams, really lose out because they have to play teams that are more games against teams, and they had it set up perfectly. And I don't know why the last minute changed just to get 2 extra games, because you made a point, Matt. Maybe they don't, outside of New York bubble, nobody gives a crap about the Mets playing the Yankees. Just like when the Dodgers play the Angels, that's an LA thing.
Yeah, nobody cares.
We don't care about it. And it's not making the schedule fair. And say what you want. Maybe the Yankees go in and win 5 or 6 against the Mets. Anything is possible when you play the games. But I tell you what, I could see the Yankees guaranteed to steamroll Miami. So to take away games and let them play a team like, would you rather, why would you want to face DeGrom two times when you could face, I don't know, Bartolo Colon on the Marlins if he'd be their ace? I mean, you get my point.
So the bigger question then to me is does baseball need to realign? We're gonna get rid of we're gonna have a DH rule, supposedly. We see if this happens or not. Would it be better to realign baseball where the Yankees, the Mets, the Philadelphia, the Nationals are all in one division? I mean, you don't think so?
Realign locally?
Only because I worry about one thing. If you do that, like one of the things is that slowly's bothered me over time with baseball is they've kind of like slowly gotten away from what baseball was all about. You know what I mean? Like a little thing here, a little thing there. I don't want to see them take away all those rivalries, regardless of maybe Baltimore's not that good right now, but they still have a history with playing the Yankees and Boston. And I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think you lose some of that juice, some of that fire. When the Mets played the Yankees in the World Series in, was it 2000? Was it
2001? Yeah.
That was great because they don't play during the regular season. Personally, to be honest with you, I'd like to just get rid of interleague play and just go back to the way it was, where you would be sitting around clamoring like, God, wouldn't it be amazing for the city if the Yankees and Mets met in the World Series because they never play each other? Now it's just like, oh, well, let's review the 12 games they played this season as we prepare for the World Series.
I think this is an example of the league maybe just putting a little bit too much seasoning on the meal after it was done. I think just a little bit too much dressing. I think they were good, and they're saying, man, we should just do something to kind of spice it up a little bit. Let's add some more rivalry games in. And I think this is just an example of them trying to just do just a little bit too much.
Thank you.
Jim, I completely disagree with you on the interleague play. I think interleague play during the season is important. I think it's important for a lot of different reasons as far as scouting purposes, gauging your team against who might be your opponent. Like when you see a top-tier NL team face off against a top-tier AL team in the middle of the season, first of all, the draw numbers.
World Series.
And you're like, everybody's like, hey, this could be the World Series. And guess what? If they give you a good game, if they give you a 12-inning rundown and people are scoring runs and they're getting strikeouts and it's a good game, guess what? Now people are clamoring to see it even more because they know what it could be on a 5 or a 7-game series.
Gotcha.
Okay. So – I think in that way, if you look at it that way, I believe that it could be a good thing if it plays out right. If it plays out right.
Right. So real quick, I'm going to answer this question for Alex, and then we'll get into, because we still got to talk about the Yankee and Mets 5 players we're looking to improve this year in the Cespedes thing, and I want to get all that in today. Alex just asked, so we'll just use one-word answers here. Just out of curiosity, who would you root for if the World Series was White Sox versus Cubs and or Angels versus Dodgers? So I will tell you I would root for the White Sox because I think they're going to be really good this year, and people are underestimating how good. I have them as my pick to win that division, and I would take the Dodgers. How about you guys? White Sox, Cubs, who you got?
I'd go Cubs just because of their suffrage of throughout time, and I'd go with the Dodgers because they're linked up to the old city.
Matt?
You can ditto me on the Cubs because of their history. The Angels and the Dodgers, the Dodgers are from Brooklyn originally, so maybe I'd probably go from them.
You could
That's my
say,
only reason.
Angels to see Mike Trout win that title, and the Cubs just won the title like less than 10 years ago.
Finally,
I'm not a big individual play guy because Mike Trout. If the Angels win, the Angels win. That's the kind I go with teams anyway.
I got you. All right, so that answers Alex's question. So one of the things that we talk about the DH, and we talk about what teams the DH helps. Now you automatically remove American League teams from this conversation because they had the DH anyway. So they haven't gained anything. One of the big people it helps is the Mets because Cespedes has barely played in 2 years. JD Davis cemented himself as an everyday player last year, and he's young, and he's going to start in left field most nights. And Dominic Smith can go out in left field when they need to get that lefty bat in there, who also showed that he can hit, field and hit. And, when Pete Alonso took over the first base job, Cespedes is ready. Reports are he's completely healthy. He's ready to go. And the Mets have him slated in to be their full-time DH. So Cespedes is 34 or 35 years old, somewhere in there. This is the last year of his contract. He will not be a Met next year. I don't care if he hits 100 home runs. They're not bringing him back. So two-part question. We'll go Mac to Matt. I want to get both of your opinion on this. Number one, is it good for Cespedes that now he could play because there's every day instead of this every fourth day? And number two, do you think Cespedes has one of those seasons that you see a lot of players have when it's their walk year and they just all of a sudden play up to their potential and then they get one more contract out of it from somebody?
Yeah, I mean, for Cespedes, because of fielding and his recent injuries and stuff, yeah, I mean, of course it helps him. Does it? What will his numbers be? We'll find out because he didn't really play that much that last year. So, I mean, I'll be interested to see what he can do just as a DH. As far as being his walk-off here to go somewhere else, possibly if the Mets don't return him, you always see that these people that are coming up on contracts like Stanton for the Yankees and other players like that, they have these big years and we sign them or we take on their contracts for a lot of money. So yeah, this is a big year for Cespedes. And if he does have a year like he's had in the past, it will help you guys out a great deal.
What do you think?
Listen, if Cespedes can step back in after not playing since 2018 and even be kind of good, serviceable, middle of the pack batter, middle of the pack OPS, decent slugging percentage. If he can do that, it'll help the Mets. But fact of the matter is he's been so hurt and he hasn't played in so long. Is this guy going to step back in, although he's had time to heal up and things like that? Sure. But I don't know if Cespedes is a guy that's going to help in and be the difference maker for the Mets after so much time off. I think it's going to be more along the lines of like Wilson Ramos stepping up this year, or Ahmed Rosario coming in and making a difference. JD Davis is going to have to step up. Brandon Nimmo, those guys, Conforto, those guys are going to have to really step it up. Those are going to be the ones that make the difference for you. When they figure out who their DH is going to be, if it's going to be Alonso full-time, Robinson Cano, that guy was –
Well, Cano's going to start at second base, but – see, that's the one thing.
How are they still starting him at second base after last year? How is he even still on this team? Because if it wasn't for that contract, he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't be there, Jim. The fact that the Mets are going to put Robinson Cano back on second base this year just because of the fact that they're paying him so much
why
money.
not? What's wrong with him? Look at his
Man,
stats.
smoking. He's horrible, Jim. He's horrible. He can't field. He can't bat anymore. None of that. Stick his butt in the DH, and if he can't do it, get rid of him. That's what the Mets need to do. They need to get their stuff together.
He had 256 last year with 13 home runs, and he only played half a season. 13
because why?
Because he was hurt.
Why did he only – come on, man. He was full of crap for half of that. They knew he was okay, and they didn't want him on the field.
Because
he can't field. He can't play.
Didn't like him as a Yankee. He's one of the best Yankee second basemen.
I loved him as a Yankee, but he's washed. They got to get – the Mets are killing themselves.
Yeah,
They're
the
killing
Mets
themselves.
had to take on Cano to get Diaz. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that really worked out really well for them last year. That really worked out great for them.
Don't throw stones. You guys are paying Stanton $48 million a year, and he can't hit a baseball. So, I mean, we all have our problems.
He was hurt last year. We know what Stanton can do. Stanton's won an NL MVP.
Yeah, but Stan is officially hasn't done squat in 2 years. He's finished. He's finished. He's finished. You don't know that.
I quit.
Fans don't even like Stan. But I want to bring up
You're right, we don't.
I want to bring up an interesting point that I put. But Stan, so you touched on his injuries. So far in 3 of his 4 years with the Mets, this will be his 4th. He's only played in 251 of 486. However, I don't worry so much about what Cespedes does at the plate for a few reasons. The first being Matt just touched base. If Cespedes is struggling, they could put Cano at DH because Cano can still hit. That's, he can. So, he's only going to be 37. I mean, let's not act like 37 is out to pasture. Cano could DH, which helps us in the field. The one place the Mets are not weak is hitting. The Mets hit. Right. They have a lot of good hitters.
They got guys.
And, you mentioned Rosario. I got to get his picture up next year. You look like. Am I sure his name is not Rosario and we're not doing this with a Met? Have you ever seen his picture? You're like his
No,
twin.
I don't.
Oh, my. You might want to look him up with the beard. Seriously, you're his twin. You should
get out there and sling it back. I could probably play
you money.
I need a likeness. I can probably play shortstop better than
I guarantee you.
He's a really good shortstop. He's an amazing shortstop. I love Rosario shortstop.
Go ahead.
You guys forgot about Dominic Smith too. I mean, here's a guy that can full a DH role and he even can give Alfonso a rest now and then at first base. So that's another good DH possibility.
Yeah, the Mets can hit. They have a lot of hitters and a lot of homegrown hitters with Nimmo, Rosario, Alonso, Nimmo, Rosario, Conforto, Dominic Smith, McNeil. The Mets. One thing the Mets don't lack is hitting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times what's going to happen is Matt Adams or Dominic Smith are going to go ahead and start, and I think Alonso's going to be the DH because you can put Polar Bear up there, man, and just let him swing that bat.
He fielded really well last year.
Yeah, no, he's a great fielder. There's no question. There's no question. But I'm saying as a DH option when it really comes on to it, if you look, if Cespedes or Cano, which really you're just throwing 2 buckets up into the air and hoping they land right side up, when you put those 2 guys out there at DH, at least if you put Pete Alonso in that slot, you're going to have production no matter what.
Well, I think what's going to happen, Mag, is I think that Cespedes will get the first start as the everyday DH. I think Cespedes, they've already said, is going to get that shot. And let's not forget, you just talked about Cano. Cespedes is 3 years younger than Cano, so 34 is not over the hill. And if Cespedes is healthy, Cespedes can hit. Yeah. I could very easily see Cespedes. He might not hit for the average, but I could easily see if you gave Cespedes 55 games to play out of the 60 at DH, he might only hit 260, but I could see Cespedes putting up 15 bombs.
It's a 5 games. It's a lot, man.
Not out of possibility. He can hit. In baseball, after all the bickering they did in the offseason, they might need to juice the crap out of the balls. Like, seriously, because what brings fans back to baseball? Home runs.
Let the players juice. Forget it. Say, hey, you guys have 60 games, juice it up as much as you want for 60 games and crank them out of the park.
Testing. We're going to fix the ball. So that brings us to our final segment of the day, and we've got 30 minutes. So I don't know if we'll get through all of it, but we'll try. So I wanted to talk about players that probably have the most to prove. I saw this article on another site. Players that have the most to prove between the Mets and the Yankees, because one thing with a shorter season is that there are a lot of people who were brought in here for 1 year or on the last year of their deal. And you look and we sit here and we talk about how important it is to not get on a bad streak, to not go 4-11. 5-10, because how much time do you have to make that up? But what about for a player who maybe in a 162 game season would have a bad April, but then have 5 months to recover, have a great 5 months? For example, look at the Phillies' Aaron Nola last year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Aaron Nola is their ace. Coming off of 2018, he was almost the Cy Young winner. He finished 2nd or 3rd to DeGrom. Mm-hmm. 2019, the first 3 months, he was horrible. Horrible. The last 3 months, he was almost the best pitcher in baseball, and it gave him an overall good statistical year because he had 3 months. You don't have that this year. So if you're a player who's in the last year of your deal and you're looking for a payday, If you have a bad 6 weeks, you ain't going to get paid much. And that's what I want to run down. So let's go name by name on who's in. We'll start with the Mets, then go to the Yankees of who needs to shine this year. Okay. This is just people that have starting to prove. So we'll start with the first Met name, Dylan Betances. Now, Dylan Betances is coming off a lot of injuries for the Yankees. He only got signed by the Mets to a 1-year, $10 million deal. The Mets signed him because their biggest concern is their bullpen. How important is it for Dylan Betances to not only stay healthy, but get off to a fast start so he can get paid like an elite closer?
Man, listen, he was extremely useful in New York. Like, this is a guy that can really step in and make a huge difference for the Mets, in my opinion. Like, you're looking at a guy who came in there. He only played one game in 2019, obviously. He was 4-6 with 4 saves in 2018. He played 66 games, 2.7 ERA. This is a guy with only 20. He's got a below 500 career record as far as 21 and 22, but he's played in 358 games. So with a 2.36 ERA. So if he can come in there and even get back to form after that shoulder injury just a little bit for the Mets, that could be a person that really takes them over the hump back to the World Series.
Absolutely. What do you think, Mac? Big season for Betances because he wants to be paid. He wants to be paid like a closer, and he had to take a 1-year deal from the Mets because of the fact that he was coming off an injury.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these things. Before I get to Betances, I don't know if you're really going to even be able to judge off this year some of these people coming up because, like you said, there's going to be a lot of pitchers and a lot of players that get hot streaks and get hot and cold and come on at the end of the year. So I don't know how much is going to be relevant to whether their contracts are big or small. Getting offered in 2021 is going to be crazy to begin with. But the Betances alone, not only had a shoulder, he had Achilles too, and both affect the power.
He tore it.
Yeah, and both affect the power, both affect control. So, I mean, if he's healthy, he is a great pitcher. He could be a closer, but he's never got to the point where he's gotten to the big place where he closed the game for us anyway. And we have 100 relievers over at Yankees. I don't want to start on that. But he is effective. He is still young. And if he can get that both together, he could be an outstanding reliever, outstanding long setup man for the Mets.
Well,
he's got 6'8".
Yeah, he could definitely be the Mets closer. I mean, if he gets off to a slow start, 60 games, you don't have time to wait. But Mac, you segued into a question that I have for you because I want to get to the next player. And you mentioned that you don't know how much stock you can put into it. So I'm going to segue and put you on the spot here on the record. So Marcus Stroman is in the last year of his deal. Okay. He's in the last year of his deal and he's in his prime years. He's not aged. Okay. Now, I think it's going to be a huge season for Stroman because he's looking to get paid. This is Stroman's first time to really go on the market and get a ton of money because you know how they pay starters. So this is a chance for me to kind of put you on the spot because you segued into it. If a lot of rumors have been going around because, I mean, let's face it, until the Mets are sold, the Mets don't pay anybody. They only paid DeGrom because the fans would have burnt down the fucking field. They would have burnt down the field. It's all right. Sorry. Good NG17 on this thing. So they would have burnt down the field if they didn't sign DeGrom. So they probably won't sign Stroman. If they do sign him, that means Stroman had a bad year and can't get any offers. So here's my question. Stroman's name has been thrown out a lot, potentially for next year going to the Yankees because Tanaka's a free agent, Paxton's a free agent, Happ's a free agent, and Stroman is younger and better than all of them.
Definitely.
And a New Yorker.
And a New Yorker. So here's my question, Max, since you said I don't put too much into what they do this year. So if Stroman goes out and pitches to a 5-5 record with a high 4 ERA, and he wants $22 million a year for 5 years, since you don't want to put stock into the stats, you tell the Yankees pay him anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's listen, this is a great pitcher. I mean, first of all, think about it, Jim. You're going to have to DH for the first time for the year in a National League. Your ERAs are going to go up a little bit.
Looking for excuses already.
That's just
It's true. He's right.
That's just going to happen. Your ERAs, those low ERAs in the National League, are going to go up a little bit more because you have actual hitters up there instead of pitchers. But yeah, I mean, how can you take this guy's going to pitch in 60 games, maybe 10 to 12, 15 at the most games, and you're going to say, well, he went 6-6 this year. It's not a regular season. You're going to say, well, he's not worth that money. He's one of the best pitchers in the game right now.
So if that's to you or regardless this year, you don't care.
Yeah, I'm even if he goes 5-6, as long as that his ERA stays within reason, he still has
a high ERA of 4.95 is not good ERA.
Well, I'm just saying that's going to go up a little bit. It might go up a point for most pitchers going with a DH right now. That might happen. But anyway, I think you can't take a lot of stock in some of these players that already have a good resume that have pitched before and throw them into 60 games and say, okay, if you don't win all 15, you're out of there.
I just wanted to make sure you were going to pay him. Tyrone brings up a great point on Facebook that if we get new owners, Stroman will probably stay. And according to, and we're not going to get into this today, we'll cover this next week, but according to reports that came out this week, the Wilpons have told the people that handle getting the bids for them that they want to sell the team by the end of July or before the end of the year. As I think I heard that there's a deadline of when they have to agree to sell the team so that the league can have the amount of time they need to do their background on the potential owners and approve them for next year. And I believe that deadline is the end of July. Okay, so since we are up against you want to keep it going, I'm going to let you guys go one player each. So I'm going to go to Matt for the next player. And Matt, you might not even remember this guy is a Met because until I told up this article, I forgot he was a Met. But the Mets had Lowry, who was an all-star 2 years ago and signed a 2-year, $20 million deal coming off an all-star season in which he hit 36 home runs in Oakland, which is impressive because anyone hitting 36 home runs in Oakland, which is like one of the bigger stadiums in the league, that's impressive. And he ain't played yet. And we're sitting here talking about Cespedes and Cano. See, we all forgot Lowry existed. So
yeah,
I haven't even heard Lowry still walking in a damn boot. What you mean? This is just a typical Met thing, and I'm saying that as a fan that they signed someone and he never even sees the damn field.
It's crazy that Jed Lowry went from playing 157 games and making 680 plate appearances in 2019 to being in 9 games with 7 plate appearances in 2018 to only playing in 9 games in 2019. You went from an all-star and an MVP candidate, 20th in MVP voting, to playing in 9 games for the Mets. It what's the word I could use? It befuddles me, Jim and Mech. It befuddles me that Jed Lowry had such a great fall. I mean, granted, last year the Mets not managed very great.
He didn't play a game in the regular season last year.
Didn't touch the regular season last year. You know what I'm saying? And with everything going, he's 36 years old, and I mean, he's still healthy and he can still play. I truly believe that 36 in the MLB is still serviceable. He can still play. But what is he going to do? Is he going to be your DH? Is he going to get on the field and play every day now this late? I don't know if he can come in right now and run all 60 games. I think he'll be valuable. I think he'll be a good utility guy for them.
I don't even know if he's healthy yet. I don't know if
exactly. And that's the thing. Is he even going to touch the field?
If he's even on the 60 man. I don't know.
You guys might get to see some of your prospects in place of Jed Lowry on the 60 for the Mets.
Instead of Jed Lowry at second base. I mean, I'll
probably be able to move a little bit better laterally than he will.
Probably, for sure. I don't even think it's a question. A couple questions real quick from the fans. Tyrone says they're coming off the payroll. Lowry and Cespedes, we could sign Stroman and Betances. I would question that. It depends who owns the team because the Wilpons already said with all the money they're going to lose this year, if they still own the team next year, they have to lower the payroll from 170 million to 120. If you're lowering the payroll to 120 million, you're not signing anybody.
Such a joke.
Michael asked me a question, says, do I think Jacob deGrom can three-peat as the Cy Young winner? If this was a 162-game season, I would say definitely. Because of the fact that he only gets 11 starts, if he has 3 bad ones, then the question's no. So I would be very hard to three-peat because you can't afford 2 or 3 bad starts when you only get 11 and then you win the Cy Young. So it's hard to recover. So it's going to be tough. He's got to be Cy Young guy from day one to three-peat. So
the thing I don't get about Lowry is that he was hamstring strain and a calf strain is really the primary issue he was dealing with going into camp last year when he showed up with the brace and stuff on. And it just like nothing ever developed into him getting back on the field. I don't understand. Mets took a big loss there. 2 years, $20 million for nothing.
They could have gave me half of that. I'd have did whatever they want. All right, so now we're back to Mac. Alec wants to ask real quick. It's a little off topic, Alex. So I'm just going to throw it in there real fast. Do you think the Astros will get hit by pitches? I do, but I think not as much because of the fact that anybody that gets suspended for anything that could start a fight, it's a longer suspension. So do you want Chapman throwing at an Astro getting thrown out of a game and then it's an automatic 7-game suspension because they're trying to avoid fighting because of the coronavirus on a season where you only play 60 games? Probably not. You can hit them in 2021. You don't forget. Write it down somewhere. So anyway, let's get back to Mac. Dominic Smith, number 4 on the list, who you brought up. 25 years old, 11 homers, 881 OPS in limited time, 303 batting average against lefty. He killed it last year for a platoon guy. Great. Was a great guy on the team. Never complained that Alonso came up and took his job. Nothing like that. Was always positive. I love the kid. He did so well last year that everybody the Mets tried to reach out to trade for, they wanted Dominic Smith back, and the Mets said he's not tradable.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Dominic Smith, Max?
Hey, listen, I think that if the Mets let this guy go, they're crazy. You gotta have a young guy that's there in case Alfonso gets hurt, that's already played first base, has a great bat all around, average and power, and hits well in certain situations. I mean, why would you give up? I mean, you're not going to have to offer this guy, $20 million a year, something big like that. I think you could keep this guy on reasonably and is a great player to have around.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll get to the last one because then we got to get to the Yankees here and we'll go back up to Matt. So Pete Alonso.
Boy.
Well, what can you say? He set the rookie home run record, beating out Judge by 1. Got to always throw that in there. What can you expect from him? I mean, he's obviously got the power bat. They say it's a big season for him because he's coming off the rookie of the year and all of that. But I mean,
can you really call it a big season, Jim? Can you really call it a big season? It's 60 games. I mean, he has to show some semblance of, he has to show that projection. Like, okay, if we can project out over the course of 165 games, what you did in these 60 games, and we say, okay, hey, if he had the full schedule, he would have hit 55 home runs and 100 and whatever RBIs and whatever it might be. Okay. If we can prorate it, if we can protract it out and say, okay, this is what he was on course for, yeah. But you have to be able to say that. You can't let them say, hey, if based on what he did in 60 games, if we played 162 and he only batted 40 home run or 20 home runs and 35, 40 RBI, something ridiculously low, like he wasn't hitting, he wasn't getting on base, nothing like that, then people will be questioning him. But I don't see any kind of big bump against him if he doesn't perform above and beyond this season, the 60 games.
Well, they're mentioning the sophomore slump in their which I mean is a thing everybody knows about in baseball. Yeah. And they're also pointing out how, because he gets a lot of comparison to Aaron Judge based on the power. They're saying that Aaron Judge wasn't nearly as productive in 2019 as he was in 2018 when he won Rookie of the Year. So they're saying, though. But I mean, I guess if you're going to have a sophomore slump, it's a lot better to do it in a 60-game season and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Do it in 162. Let's get it out of the way and then go play 162, right? So
I don't know about that, Jim. That might hurt you guys bad if he has a sophomore slump in 60 games.
It is what it is, though.
Yeah. All right. But what I'm saying is, I mean, listen, this guy is your future. I mean, batting, you can get hot and cold. When I played baseball, I'd have some weeks where I would run up, I'd bat 400 and something, and some weeks I'd come in, I'd bat 2 something. It's all about average. So, I mean, if you guys let this guy go, it's just crazy. So,
well, I think that with Alonso, though, he's one of those guys that you're okay that he hits 260, 270 as long as he's bombing the ball out of the park. Me personally,
the slugging percentage is way up.
Yeah. Me personally, as a fan, I'd like to see him, because, you're always trying to improve as a player. You don't want to I'd like to see him I don't need him to hit 300. That's what I got Jeff McNeil for. That's what I've got. Rosario almost hit 300. Nimmo is the great on base guy. I want to see Alonso raise that to like 280.
Yeah, 275,
You know,
280.
know when there's a guy on third and there's 2 outs, choke up a little bit, hit the single. You don't always got to hit the home run.
Yeah, roll some guys through. Brody Van Wagenen will end up fucking trading him.
No, right?
Yeah.
If the team gets sold, Brody Van Wagenen won't be here. Brody Van Wagenen will never trade Alonso. Just don't listen. Don't get me making signs already. It's too early. It's too early. So they don't even have to worry about Alonso for 5 years. They have control of him for 5. So let's turn over to the Yankees and five names to keep an eye out here for. And we'll go Matt, you both Yankee fans.
15 minutes.
All right, we got time, plenty of time. We can go over too because no one's behind us on the schedule today. So we'll start with Tanaka. Now, it's no secret that Tanaka has in the postseason, he's consistent, but over the last 2 or 3 years, he's been down. His ERA has gone up almost a whole point into the mid-4s. He's 31 years old. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Just to give you a comparison to what kind of deals other similar people got on the market, because he's going to turn 32 this year. When Dallas Keuchel was 32, he got a 3-year, $55 million deal. When Hyun-Jin Ryu was 33, he just got a 4-year, $80 million deal with Toronto. Tanaka had a big contract. He had a $155 million deal when he came out of Japan. He did not opt out of his deal after 2017, which he could have done and made the Yankees pay more money because he didn't hit his downslope then. So he could have opted out. But the market's saying that Tanaka will probably get something in that 3 to 4 range between $55 and $80 million. How big of it is a year? How big of a year is it for Tanaka? It's a 2-part question for both of you. 1, how big of a year is it? And 2, if he has a big year, do the Yankees definitely sign him? Because once you get to 32, and not everyone's Justin Verlander who gets better when he's 37. What do you think, Matt?
Well, first
coming off. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Matt. Do it to it, baby. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Matt. What I'm going to say is, first and foremost, since he got to the Yankees in 2014, he hasn't had a losing record as a starting pitcher. Okay, and that counts for a lot. Granted, 2015 he didn't play any because of injury. He was in AAA, and then in 2018 he was in AAA most of the season. What they keep Tanaka around for is his playoff performance. He's got a 1.34 ERA in the playoffs, and he's been there a lot. Okay, and he will get us wins. He'll get us 10, 11 wins in the season. He'll be above 500 as a starting pitcher, and he's going to perform in the playoffs, which is the most important thing because the Yankees will be there, and he will be the number 2 guy coming behind Cole. Okay, so it's very, very important.
Don't forget Severino next year will be your number 2.
Well, that remains to be seen as to how he's going to come back.
That's
out.
why I'm asking. If you have a chance in the offseason to sign Tanaka,
absolutely, 31 years old, absolutely,
he'll be 32. If you had to give him 4 years or $80 million, or, and I guess I'll ask Mac this question: would you give him 4 years, $80 million, or would you give 5 years, $120 million to Stroman?
Yeah, I'll go Stroman in a minute. Listen, Tanaka has been coming down in the regular season. And you know something? And this is a bigger thing real quick about the Yankees. They got to shore up their starting pitcher. I'm tired of all these relievers. It might help us this year because of the shortened season, but it hasn't worked in years. We get to the playoffs, and I don't care how good Tanaka's in the playoffs, we lose in the playoffs. We've got a Tanaka. I think they should, if it's reasonable, we'll keep him as a 3rd, 4th starter. If he wants money, big money that a normal starting pitcher would get, I'd say sayonara. I would say goodbye.
I hear what Matt's saying. The only thing I disagree with what you said, Matt, on one thing is that I'm not so sure his record to me matters. And I only say that is because when you're on a team like the Yankees that hit the way the Yankees hit, you're going to win. I mean, if you look, in 2017, he went 13-12 with a 4.74 ERA. That's not a good ERA. And in 2019, he went 11-9 with a 4.49. So 1 game over and 2 games over on one of the best teams in baseball both years. If he had pitched for any other team, he would have been 10 games under.
Yeah, look at what he did in the playoffs those years, though.
Right, but you give a guy 4 years, $80 million just to be a playoff pitcher.
I wouldn't give him at 32, 4 years, $80 million. He would have to work that out. Like, we've paid you a ton of money, brother, and gave you a lot of leeway as far as your performance and stuff like that. We've left you on the mound when we shouldn't have. We've given you starts when you were terrible out there for periods of time, stretches of time throughout the season. So he needs to. I think he's going to work with us a little bit, knowing that he's not going to get that giant check somewhere else right now with all the young talent out there pitching. And I think he's going to work with the Yankees, and I think he's going to cut him a little bit of a break, and they're going to be able to re-sign him to a reasonable deal.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he won't be back with the Yankees just because I think that you have a lot of dumb teams out there that like to overpay people, like the Angels Classic at doing that and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if like the Angels said, here you go, here's 4 years, $90 million.
If they could move a guy like Ottavino somehow or another into like a starting role, if he could take that step, if Ottavino or maybe a Canely or what, even Chad Green, one of those guys, Jordan Montgomery can really step it up, then they have options to
don't
replace
forget
them.
You only need one starter next year because you're going to have you have Cole. Some point next year, probably not at the beginning. Severino will be back. Herman will have served his suspension. Jordan Montgomery will be ready. Devi Garcia is almost ready. He's a good prospect in the minor league. The Yankees have options. They'll probably need to get to either keep an arm or get an arm. One. So that brings my next arm. And then we'll pick it up a little bit here. James Paxton's in the same situation. He's going to pitch now because he wasn't going to start the season, but his injury healed. He's in his free agent year as well. But he doesn't have the resume that Tanaka has. That's the problem. He was reliable. He posted a 3.82 ERA for you guys last year, but he only had 150 innings. He's been hurt in every year of his career. He's never pitched over 160 innings. Durability has always been a concern. He's going to be a free agent. How big? I don't want to know whether you think he'll be back or not. I just want to know how big, and this time we'll go Mac to Matt real quick. How big is it for him to have a good season and be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, for his option this year coming up to get on the contract with somebody else, I really don't think we're going to keep Paxton. I mean, unless he's willing to be a fifth or starter or something like that. This is his year to go make some money. So this year, even though it's a short season and he's supposedly healthy, and we'll see if that's true or not as the 60 games progress. This is his year to do something because this might be his last payday.
31, it's going to definitely be your last payday. We'll go down to the next player and let Matt handle this guy. So Gio Urshela is one of those guys that I always use the term, I like to bust Max chops on. I say it seems like somebody puts on a Yankee uniform and they turn from garbage to stud. And Gio Urshela is definitely one of those guys. Because Gio Urshela is not 24 years old. Gio Urshela is 28 going on 29. He was terrible everywhere he was.
Not a good player.
Right. And then he comes to the Yankees and he has a great season. I, for one, feel that was a one-hit wonder. I still don't think he's good because I look deep at the stats. I don't just look at you guys, some players just want to look at the stats. I go down and look at his WAR. I go down and look at his percentages on strikeouts and walks for his whole career. He's never been a good hitter. And then so I think he just had a one-year gem, which people have had. Do I need to remind Yankee fans about Shane Spencer, who looked like Babe Ruth? And then he wasn't in the league anymore. And unfortunately, the Mets took him when he wasn't worth anything. So, it happens. Gio Urshela is going to be 29. He could always field. I'll say that about Urshela. Yeah. At Cleveland, he was a defensive replacement. He could field. He's coming up. How big of a year is it for Gio Urshela? And is it really a big year, Matt, for them with the fact that he plays third base and Andujar's back? So, I mean, if Gio Urshela stinks it up, is it really even a loss for the Yankees with the rookie?
Well, let's be very careful about saying that Andujar is back, okay? Because we don't know how he's going to bounce back from that shoulder surgery and stuff like that. Gio Urshela, in my opinion, was never really given a fair shake, whether it was in Cleveland or Toronto, because if you look at it, I think in Toronto he played 19 games, had 45 plate appearances, and in Cleveland, the 2 seasons he was there, it was a little over 100 games, I think.
Yeah.
So as far as offensively, he never really had a chance to let his bat shine or anything like that. He played in 132 games batting for the Yankees this year, which equaled out to his entire career combined. as far as plate appearances and stuff concerned. He had more plate appearances last year for the Yankees than he did his entire career. So I think that's really going to allow him to develop and be a key player for the Yankees for a long, long time. I think Gio Urshela is going to be a big wheel in the whole process.
In your opinion, it wasn't a one-hit wonder.
No, I think now that he's being injected into the lineup and given an opportunity to shine, he'll be all right.
All right. We're going to go out. Speaking of Andahar, we'll go down to Max. So 2 years ago, Andahar hits 27 home runs, slashes 297. He's not a walk guy. He's a, swing, hit it or miss it kind of guy. Runner-up of the Rookie of the Year to Ohtani. He then gets hurt. The only knock people have on Andahar, because he always hit in the minor leagues, is he can't field.
Yeah.
He's a butcher. In the offseason, they tried to move him to first. He couldn't do that either. So they have nowhere to put him. So if it wasn't for Stanton being on the Yankees, he'd be the full-time DH. The only thing stopping him is the fact that Stanton's got a DH sometimes too, because he's not that great of a fielder. So what do you think of Andahar? Because I'm more along the edge that Andahar is going to – I thought Andahar was a great player. I had him in my fantasy league. I still think he is. I think he can rake. And I think Andahar is going to take the job back. That's why I don't even think Urshela will be a Yankee next year.
Right. I think that coming off, as Matt just said, coming off that shoulder injury, we'll find out. Andujar, thank you. Andujar is a great ball player. Like you said, runner up a Rookie of the Year.
That's
great hitter. Even if he comes back and takes third, I don't think we have to get rid of Urshela. I mean, he could be a utility player on our team.
No, you won't get rid of him, but you got to realize he's in one of those deals where, like, Urshela is one of those guys. He's not in a long-term deal, so like you could use him this year, and then next year, if you don't bring him back, you don't bring him back.
Right, but I'm just saying, why wouldn't you want to sign? I don't think he's going to go demanding a lot of money from anybody. I mean, I don't know. Who knows who will try to sign him? But Andujar was a great ball player. I think we're going to have to wait and see how he plays coming off that shoulder injury, because that affects not only his hitting but his fielding too.
Well, he can't field anyway, so don't worry. I mean,
he's not a great fielder.
Healthy, so. but the biggest mystery of the Yankees, and I don't even have to read this because I know everything about this guy. Clint Frazier befuddles me. He always has. I'm going to explain to you why, so then you guys can give your comments. The Clint Frazier is not a good fielder. Very not good at all. Used to be, though. This is what's weird. When Clint Frazier was coming up through the Cleveland minor league system, he was projected as a potential Gold Glove center fielder. Now the Yankees are afraid to put him in the field because he just misplays regular fly balls. Now, Clint Frazier has the talent with the bat to be up, but the Yankees have a plethora of outfielders that block him, and Judge, Stanton, Hicks, Brett Gardner's still there. So every year it looks like he's ready to come up. He gets blocked. Now, every time, we mentioned this before about Dominic Smith, every time the Yankees talk to a team about a trade, they want Frazier. And the Yankees always say no, which that doesn't make any sense to me because he can't field anymore. And he says stupid stuff in front of the microphone, which never works out well in New York. Can you explain to me why the Yankees just don't trade the guy so they can get that last piece to win the World Series? Because Gardner's here this year. He's got an option for next year. Stanton's here until he's dead. Judge is definitely Judge is not going anywhere, right? And Aaron Hicks just signed a 7-year deal. So tell me where you have room for Clint Frazier in the next 3 years.
If there's one player that I felt was useless for the Yankees to have on the depth chart this coming season or even last season, is Clint Frazier. I get it. He's 26. He's young. He's got a ton of talent. We know what he can do. He comes from a good program all the way back from high school, Logansville High School in Georgia, one of the top baseball programs in the country. Okay, it's not like this guy's coming out and not knowing how to play baseball. Okay, I think he had a rough go at it last year and the last couple of years, and a big part of it's not being able to get on the field unless one of these guys goes down with injury. And when you can't, and Clint Frazier's the kind of guy, if you look, when he gets the opportunity to get in the lineup on a regular basis, and he can get in a rhythm and get his swing down and get comfortable on base and get his feet set the right way and know the field, he can succeed. But if he doesn't get the chance to get into a rhythm, No chance. I think he's out of there.
Mac, do you realize that last year the Yankees could have had Zach Wheeler, who's really good. All they had to do, the Mets just said, we'll take Clint Frazier. Like I said, nope. Might have won the World Series if you picked up that extra starter.
You know something? I'm going to disagree with Matt here a little bit.
You're a Yankee homer.
We have a lot of injuries in the outfield. I don't care who we have signed. I don't know if Stanton's ever going to be the same again. They keep talking, and he was never a good outfielder to begin with. You got Judge, who's has been hurt. We don't even know if he's going to start. They say he's teeing off the ball. So what? So can my grandmother tee off a ball off a thing. We also, Brett Gardner is getting old. I mean, this is his last maybe good year. Maybe they keep him next year. I think it's good to have Frazier in your back pocket. He's a good young player. I think he can be developed, and I think he can even get better.
They got to fix the fielding issues, man, because like you said, I think he can be a tool player. Like, I really think that the Yankees can use him, but he needs to step it up, but he can't. He's not going to get the opportunity. The thing about, if you look at Gardy, it was a Gardy party a lot of the time last year. He was playing some serious ball last year. That guy was laying it all on the line last year in the outfield, at the plate, running bases. Brett Gardner is a leader for the Yankees, and he's going to take them where they need.
When I did that poll, a lot of people thought he should be the captain. But
I love Brett Gardner. Don't get me wrong.
We're running out of time here. I don't want to cut you guys off, but I don't know what the network has coming up today, and I don't want to run into their show times. But one last note on Frazier is that he's arbitration eligible after 2021. So a lot of people are predicting that this will probably be his last year in the pinstripes because they won't want to pay his arbitration number.
If the value comes for a trade.
Yeah, Mac.
Let me give you a couple quick transactions from Yanks media because they were good enough to put us on a list. We do have, let me see here. We did release our right-handed pitcher, Chad Bettis. He did retire. That's from Lauren Moran, the assistant director of Yankees baseball. And we also have signed our first-round draft pick catcher, Austin Wells from University of Arizona. And he was a great ball player, even though it was a short year. He batted .357, 2 home runs, 14 RBIs.
Tell Yankees media they don't need to sell us on our draft picks. We don't. You tell her we'll determine if they're good. Of course, he had good stats. They drafted him in the first round.
I'm telling you, we had a good draft pick. It has nothing to do with.
You don't know anything about the kid. You never even heard about him until you drafted him. Who are you talking about?
Mets media said don't call them no more.
Mets media will.
The exciting part about this all, though, is, to be honest, guys, is that especially with the Clint Frazier, and we're wrapping up here in the future, is that by the time we come on the air next Saturday, spring training will be open. And so we'll have plenty of time to see how things are shaking out. We'll find out if Aaron Judge is actually healthy, since there seems to be a big debate about that. Some people say he is, some people say he isn't. But we're done today. We're coming back tomorrow with football. Wake up with football in New York. Baseball's back, basketball's back, hockey's back, everything is back. Football's still playing. Well, maybe not Jenkins, but I don't care if he plays. He's not a Giant. So we're back. So we got baseball. So next week we'll be able to start talking about all the pictures and the sights and the sounds, and maybe we can get Mac to go and jump a fence at Yankee Stadium and see if he can get us some photos or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's possible. So we're done. We're out, guys. Say goodbye to the fans. Thank you to Justin, Robert, Alex, Tyrone, James, who was earlier in the show. I feel like Michael. I feel like Tyrone. I feel like I forget people every week. Bobby, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you guys tomorrow for football.
Tomorrow for Wake Up Football.
Wake Up Football in New York. Absolutely. So
peace and love.
Signing off.